going to be talking about. Well, first of all, we're finally at the New Republic Volume 1 Omnibus. I've been wanting to review this since it came out, really, but there hasn't been enough time to get there. And I had a lot of prerequisite reading I wanted to do Star Wars wise before I jumped into this omnibus. Some of this I've already reviewed before, because this collects a lot of the X-Wing Rogue Squadron comics. Although I'm thinking about re-reviewing those, because I was never a big fan of my reviews on those. But we're going to start with the first story in here, which is Mara Jade by the Emperor's Hand. And this is by Timothy Zahn and Michael Stackpole. This is a 7-issue series. One of those many times Dark Horse did an issue 0, which was an online exclusive that was collected when they did the trade, making the trade for this really hard to get back in the day. This is one of those books I dreamed about reading, so I should get into that. There were a handful of Star Wars Expanded Universe comics I really wanted as a kid, but they were way out of print and they didn't really get reprinted. Or if they did, it was a limited run. And some of those I have already reviewed, like Union, which shares some weird similarities to this one. Jedi vs. Sith and Chewbacca, as well as Dark Empire, but I did end up getting a copy of Dark Empire right before I graduated high school. I found that 3-in-1 hardcover they did back in like the late 2000s. I found that on a free comic book day. So I did have that. But I didn't have this one. This one was This one I did end up getting in the Shadows of the Empire Omnibus. When that came out, when was that? 2009? Something like that. It was one of the earlier omnibuses they made through Dark Horse, and the Shadows of the Empire omnibus consisted of the Shadows of the Empire comic adaptation, Mara Jade by the Emperor's Hand, and Shadows of the Empire Evolutions. And you may be thinking, that's weird to put Mara Jade by the Emperor's Hand in there, but there is some ties to Shadows of the Empire. So we're going to break down what this comic is about. Issue 0 establishes Mara Jade is an experiment that the Emperor has done for a Force-sensitive assassin. And it happens sometime before A New Hope. Because Tarkin's in it, he has a brief cameo, and Vader's in it. There's not a lot to it. It's basically like a prologue to what's to come. Issues 1 and 2 take place during Return of the Jedi. It opens with Mara being kicked out of Jabba's palace after the events of her story in Tales from Jabba's Palace, and the Emperor reassigning her to take out Daquah, I think is how you pronounce the Daquic. He's a gangster who's created a group called Black Nebula, who's attempting to move in on Black Sun's turf since Prince Zizer's death. Or Shizor's death. I never get that name right, I swear to God. When she thinks she's assassinated him, it turns out that was not the case, and the Emperor is assassinated himself, and he projects this image that you all, if you've read the Thrawn trilogy, are familiar with, which is that he manipulates Mara into thinking that Luke and Vader ganged up on him and just murdered him, which is far from the truth. And that's Mara. She hasn't sworn vengeance on Skywalker yet in this, but basically she gets arrested by Director Izard, because this is a Stackpole project, and of course we have to have Izard in here. And Izard's trying to maintain control of Imperial Center. And so Mara escapes, goes undercover, and then discovers due to some people she grows kind of fond of being killed by Black Nebula, that Black Nebula is still a threat, and then she finally officially takes down Black Nebula. That's Mara Jade by the Emperor's Hand. Now you might be saying, that's a lot, and you'd be right. And most of it is not that good. And I'm going to throw some hot takes in here that are going to shock some people. I'm not a big Zahn fan. Zahn did a lot for the EU. The Thrawn trilogy and the Hand of Thrawn duology, I think, are five very good books. And I do love Outbound Flight, although it has some problems. And Survivor's Quest, from what I remember, is okay but forgettable. But like I've said on the Legends podcast, I think Allegiance, Choices of One, and Scoundrels are all really bad books, especially Scoundrels. That book hurts my brain as to why it exists. It has no reason to exist in the format that it is. And Zahn writing in the Rebellion era is not an enjoyable thing. Also, I was not a fan of his Tales from the Mos Eisley Cantina. I considered it one of the worst ones in that. It's very boring, and it's clearly setting up stuff for Hand of Thrawn duology. And his new canon stuff is pretty terrible. Zahn got a big ego around this time because the Thrawn trilogy was so successful, and he really thought that his shit didn't stink, and he wasn't particularly pleasant to other authors, except for his best pal Michael Stackpole. And Michael Stackpole's an interesting one. His X-Wing books are excellent. I'm not a fan of iJedi. I think it's a pretty bad book. But his Rogue Squadron comics are hit or miss. And Stackpole writing comics is not an enjoyable thing typically to read, especially when it doesn't involve the rogues. The rogues were his bread and butter, and when he didn't write about the rogues, it wasn't that good, in my opinion. Hence why I don't think iJedi's that good. I know it's the Core and Horn book, but it's Core and Horn being a self-insert for Stackpole. This may be one of his worst. If Union didn't exist, this would be his worst. Stackpole clearly wants Izard in there because that's his antagonist for Rogue Squadron. I am sorry, Pixie is completely wild right now and running through the house. Anyway, it's one of those... It's a bad combination, because Zahn doesn't write comics. As I recall, back in the day, I believe he wrote, early in his career, a Star-Lord comic series from Marvel that no one talks about. Zahn is not built to write comics. He's built to write science fiction and not very engaging science fiction at times. What I'm getting at is Mara Jade by the Emperor's Hand's boring and way too long. There's a whole issue where she just is a waitress. I'm not kidding, that's in this. Issue 4, that's all that's about. She's a waitress, and then that's what motivates her to finally take down Black Nebula. They kill her boss. Okay. And here's the thing. This isn't likable Mara from, NJO or Hand of Thrawn, even, where she's clearly a good guy at that point. This is Mara Jade, who's still a villain, and we're supposed to think, oh, Mara Jade's the best, but, she's kind of the worst. And, people like to forget how, unpleasant she is in Heir of the Empire. And in that, it makes sense. She's having to deal with Luke, who she blames for the death of the man that she devoted her life to, who was Emperor Palpatine. That makes sense. But, Mara is supposed to be, this cool, like agent, and she just comes off as one-dimensional and bland in this. Like, even more so than like in Tales from Jabba's Palace. There's enough cool things in it, short enough that I thought Mara's character was interesting when she was like undercover. I never found Mara interesting in this. Never. She's just kind of there. And she does like a couple cool things. But I never think that Mara's in danger ever. She's got like Steven Seagal-esque plot armor. And I'm talking latter-day Steven Seagal, where he sits down and does all of his fighting. Like, it's not engaging. And then Izzard being there adds to like next to nothing to the plot, except for two, because Stackpole helped write it. It's like he had to shoehorn that character in for 2 issues. Doesn't add to anything at all. It does not. And this is like supposed to be this pivotal story as to why Mara like is in the underworld by the time we get to Heir of the Empire and working with Talon Card. Although Talon Card, thankfully not ruined in this. I guarantee if they had put that character in, would have been ruined. It's just bland. And like the whole Black Nebula thing, it's very clear Zahn had FOMO. Him and Stackpole had FOMO because they didn't put Black Sun in their stuff up until that point. Black Sun wasn't a thing. Shadows of the Empire comes out. It's this behemoth of a thing for Star Wars, and especially the EU. So everything starts tying into Black Sun. I mean, around this time we have the Bounty Hunter Wars, which tied into it, and then we have to have this. And this sucks. It just sucks. It's weird. Because Mara doing missions for the Empire could be a compelling, like, set of stories. In fact, there's probably at least one Star Wars tale that deals with Mara Jade being the Emperor's hand. And this is like one of the 2 times I can think of where we actually see that prior to the prequels. Because, like, yes, Allegiance and Choices of One, Mara's in those. And I have my problems with that. It is not done well. Because Zahn was just not suited to write the Rebellion era. And this starts out the Rebellion era, moves into the New Republic era. I get this is the transition to that. It's part of that transition with the Bounty Hunter Wars and Truce at Bakura, where these sort of 3 stories kind of move us from the Battle of Endor into establishing the New Republic. In fact, if you look at the Dark Horse released this book called The Comic Companion. I believe this is the first story labeled New Republic in that. So, yeah. And it makes sense to start this omnibus with that. And I keep saying I have problems with things. That's not one of... Starting with Mara Jade by the Emperor's Hand, in my opinion, even though it's a boring story, it makes sense. It's either that or you start with, like, a Star Wars tale that happened during Return of the Jedi. And like, they learned from the Rise of the Sith epic collection, the first one, that you don't start one of those with the Star Wars Tales story. So yeah, start with Mara Jade by the Emperor's Hand. There are other issues with this omnibus in how it's put together, like how the stuff is collected, that it's not in chronological order, or at least not how I would put it in chronological order. But as we get into this, and with the post-Jedi Marvel Star Wars comics, you realize it gets a little confusing in the first 2 years after Return of the Jedi. There's a lot of things that happen, and it's not clear in what order they actually happened in. But this is where I would start the omnibus, even though it's not a very compelling story. It has Mara Jade in it, and Mara Jade is a cool character that a lot of people like. And I do like Mara Jade in the novels, the post-Jedi novels. I even like her in Darksaber. Like, I think she can be a really cool character. This is just a bad showcase of it. With bad art, bad penciling. The color's fine, but the bad penciling. But anyway, what would I rank Mara Jade by the Emperor's Hand? I'd probably give it a 2.7 out of 5. There's a handful of things that are entertaining in this. I like early on that Mara, no one knows what she even is, but she has high clearance codes in the Empire, and she bosses like Imperial officers around and stuff. That's kind of fun. And then the juxtaposition after she loses everything of she has to now make it on her own is kind of neat. But yeah, it's too long. It's about 2 issues too long. 2.5 if we count the issue 0. The issue 0 really should have been a Star Wars Tales story, if I'm being completely honest. It would have been a solid Star Wars Tales story. As it stands now, I get why it's there, because there wasn't anything at that point to fully explain Mara. I mean, there might have been stuff in the Adventure Journal. I am not up to date on every story that was published in the Adventure Journal, and I know Zahn did some things in there. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, and then we get like there is, if you are into EU Easter eggs. Sorry, all the cats are acting up right now because I am recording. And they just got fed. So please bear with me. There is a reference to one of the X-Wing novels with a certain prison. It's a blink and you'll miss it reference. And some of you are aware of that. Others, like, just wait till you get to the middle of the X-Wing book series. I believe it's book 4 it's referencing directly. It's kind of setting something up with that. It's goofy. It's a goofy, like, hey, wink wink, nudge nudge kind of thing, but I didn't hate it. I know sometimes some people are just really bad at, like, member berries. This one was an okay member berry. I'm not going to say, whoa, what's an EU connection? Oh, it's setting things up. It's not really that. It's just like, it's really, I've read this probably 3 or 4 times in my life. This was the first time I caught on to that. It is a one-off line. So, anyway, now we have a plane flying over. So, I'm going to get off of here. You have a good one.